Please kindly check the rules of Jesica 2021 and hopefully for all participants can comply with the rules.
Assalamualaikum. Poin tan buleun leun mubri salem keware lingkah kejame teka karena salem nabi keun sunah jarota mumat syarat mulia. Ceh. Hoka hoka adik lun hoka. Bubur di sinan nerakan bawah hati. Amin Allah summa amin. Allah berkaramat, Allah yang binangga asmamu sejahtera. Allah putih ngonjang gut kunengon mise atem acem besi kamu salah putih ngonjang gut kunengon mise lala getanya lala anak jantan kia madonya umat langgonya letas salahan tinggal sembayang dengan puasa.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was Indonesia traditional dance called Tari Saman or Saman dance from Aceh Darussalam, Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, our event is about to begin. Please turn on your camera and turn off your microphone. And before the event begins, here is the teaser video about our event. Happy watching.
It's globally admitted that economic sustainability plays important role in the worldwide social and economic from the US in the west to Europe in the east, and from Robben Island in the South Africa to Cafe Kebloon in Greenland in the north. It is not too much if we think that our future depends on the sustainability of sustainable economic. From machine to big data, from growth to distribution, from natural resources to finance, from social to economic, and from health to education. Economic sustainability refers to best practice that support the long-term economic development of a nation that includes growth and better living standards. It includes protecting environmental, social, and cultural elements. Today, economic sustainability is a goal that very few organizations achieve despite a fairly universal understanding of what types of business practice. For example, burning of fossil fuels, creating food waste, leveraging harmful manufacturing methods, and of course contribute to climate change. The COVID-19 pandemic and other current economic transformation have affected the pace of economic change in the whole world, and it has impacted the global economic crisis. In order to maintain the sustainability of the economic system with the current economic situation and challenges, new explanation is urgently needed in creating scientific methodologies, economic analysis, and government policy. Economic and Business Faculty from Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jakarta proudly present the first Jakarta Economic Sustainability International Conference Agenda. International Conference and Call of Papers, the theme that we will discuss of this agenda is the pandemic of COVID-19 and the Great Transformation. The annual conference is to promote and update work and economic sustainability and current economic challenges, and also to increase the awareness of the possibility of different approaches in economic and its methodology. So guys, please welcome the first Jakarta Economic Sustainability International Conference agenda.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, greeting of virtue, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Liza Fabrina. It is a wonderful and precious chance for me to be your master of ceremony in this beautiful event, Jakarta Economic Sustainability International Conference Agenda 2021. First of all, let's say thanks to God Almighty for giving a lot of grace and blessing so we could gather together at this event. In this beautiful moment, I would like to welcome the Honorable Dr. Dian Caksih Arif Tiara, SEAK, MAKCA, CSRS, as the Dean of Faculty of Economic and Business, UPN Veteran Jakarta, and also the speaker for today's event. The Honorable Professor Jayati Ghosh from University of Massachusetts Amherst, United States, as today's speaker. The Honorable Professor Oliver Babu from Paris Nantes University, France, as today's speaker. The Honorable Mr. Zakaria and Mr. Jerry as today's moderator, and also all participants of Jesica 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank everyone for taking time to attend our event today, Jesica 2021. And now, we will hold a photo session. The keynote speaker, the dean, as well as participants are welcome to take a position. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, thank you everyone. And the next session is the webinar and discussion that will be handled by Honorable Moderator, Mr. Zakaria Rialmi, SIP, MM, CHRP, and also the Honorable Co-Moderator, Engineer Jerry Marmen, MS, MIC, MMGT, PhD. Let me introduce our Honorable Moderator and Co-Moderator first. Mr. Zakaria, as moderator today, is a lecturer and secretary of Magister Management Program UPN Veteran Jakarta, and also a program financial specialist in Indonesia Ministry of Public Work and Housing. He got his Master Management of Human Research from Rio University. And Mr. Jerry, as co-moderator today, is a governance risk and compliance consultant. He got his doctoral degree from the Australian National University. He also have a lot of achievement. One of them is being an assistant of the Staff President Republic of Indonesia, specializing on economics. Without any further ado, now, please welcome Mr. Zakaria and Mr. Jerry. The time is yours.
Thank you very much, MC, for your kindly introductions. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Jakarta, Indonesia. I hope you are doing well amidst all the challenges and changes caused by this COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Zakaria Rialmi, and it is my pleasure to be your moderator and welcome you to today's international webinar of the first Jakarta Economic Sustainability International Conference agenda. The theme of today's event will be the pandemic COVID-19 and the great transformations. Well, I think it is a really great theme to talk about, right? And I am not alone. I have a company here. There is Mr. Engineer Jerry Marman, PhD, as the co-moderator. How are you, sir? Mr. Jerry, how are you, sir?
Yes, very good. I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do believe that we will have a great conversations during this webinar. And I will now outline some basic procedures of today's event programs. The webinar will commence at 4 p.m. on Western Indonesian time. The webinar will be divided into two sections. First section is presentation time for all the speakers. And the second one is the 4 discussion sections. And all the panelists, also the participants, are invited to ask a question via chat box, or you can use raise your hand feature on this Zoom application to ask your questions. And if you talk about current situations where we know the pandemic of COVID-19 was being appear since 2019, and this pandemic has a great impact to economic sustainability, not only in one country, one regions, but we talked about the global economic worldwide. We can say that the same problem is being faced by many countries, not only what you say as a developing country, but also the well-established one. According to the statement of Indonesia Finance Minister, Mrs. Sri Mulyani, where she said that within this pandemic COVID-19, Indonesia is facing 3 big problems at least. There are social problem when the government has been launched the program to restrict or to limit the people mobility in order to prevent the transmissions of this virus. And this program has great impact, especially for small, medium enterprises and informal sectors. Second one is about uncertainty for any investment circumstances. And the last one is decline of export performance as the main aspect of Indonesian economic. And I am quite sure that the same problem are also faced by many countries around the world. And this afternoon, we are blessed by the presence of our 3 expert speakers. There are Mrs. Professor Jayati Ghosh from University of Massachusetts, Amherst, United States of America. Welcome, Mrs. Professor Jayati. And then Mr. Professor Olivier Verrevu, Paris Nanterre, University of France, and Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksih Arif Tiara, CA, CSRS from Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jakarta. And before we start this program shortly, I would like to say thanks for all the participants and all the panelists for joining us on this Zoom platform. And to kick off this webinar, I would like to welcome our first speakers, Mrs. Professor Jayati Ghosh, to deliver the materials about why has Indian capitalism not been able to generate successful industrializations. But before that, I will read some curriculum vitae of her. Mrs. Professor Jayati Ghosh, founder of the Economic Research Foundations, New Delhi, a non-profit trust devoted to progressive economic research, Executive Secretary of the International Development Economic Associates, or IDEAS, a network of economists critical of the mainstream economic paradigm of neoliberalism. Educational background, graduated from University of Delhi, took master degree from Jawaharlal Nehru University, and got her PhD from University of Cambridge. Achievement, Mrs. Professor Jayati Ghosh was conferred International Labour Organization Design Work Research Prize along with the Professor F. Landau in February 2011, Satyendra Sen's Award, Asiatic Society, Kolkata 2012, ILO Design Work Research Prize, Geneva 2010, North-South Prize for Research in Social Science Foundations, Pasca Abruzzo, Italy 2010, Ava Mehti Memorial Prize, Asiatic Society, Kolkata 2006, and UNDP Award for Excellence in Analysis for West Bengal Human Development Report, New York 2006. There are so many information I got from her curriculum vitae about research and working experiences, but I think it is enough already to describe how qualified our first speakers. So, Professor Jayati, the platform is yours. You can share your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to share my screen. It's a great pleasure to be here. I was actually asked to speak specifically on the Indian economy and industrialization. And I wasn't really aware that this is specifically on the COVID. But what I will hope to show is that one of the reasons why the Indian economy has been so battered by COVID and why, in fact, the people have been suffering so tremendously is because of these broader failures of Indian capitalism. And so let me begin by pointing out that, across the rest of the world, at least, India and particularly developing Asia, they're seen as success stories of globalization, right? First, because of the 4 newly industrializing countries, then China, and then the ASEAN 4, including Indonesia, actually. But India is seen as having benefited from globalization, particularly because it's had high and sustained rates of growth. This is all pre-COVID, obviously, of both aggregate and per capita national income. And it was done without major financial crises for about 2 decades, from the 1990s onwards, with a substantial reduction in income poverty. But this actually hides the absence of structural change and the fact that there are very, very large and persistent gaps in human development, which have now made India a laggard even in South Asia, which is quite shocking to understand. So what exactly is development? Let me first explain that what I'm referring to here is not the broader meaning of development in terms of all kinds of human and social progress, which has many more variables attached to it, but just very specifically economic diversification, the change in the productive structures in the economy towards higher value-added activities. And so typically that means a movement away from the primary sector to secondary manufacturing and then eventually to tertiary. And South Korea exemplifies this. As you can see, the green line going up, that is the GDP growth, the per capita GDP in South Korea, over that between the early 60s and the mid 2000s. And that is the period when the agricultural share of employment came down, the agricultural share of income came down. Both came down very significantly. Industry, the share of industry in GDP kept increasing. The share of industry in employment actually starts declining after a while because manufacturing becomes more and more productive. So that gap is then taken up by services, but at a relatively high level of per capita income. And so if you like, South Korea is the most classic example of a developing Asian economy that has managed to achieve that productive transformation. India, it's a very different case. And everyone often thinks that India is converging or was converging to global income levels. But that's an overstatement, often because of the fact that people use PPP exchange rates, purchasing power parity exchange rates, rather than the market exchange rate to measure it. So as you can see, there's a wide and growing difference between the two. If you measure it in terms of PPP, then India's performance looks much better. Whereas if you look at it in the market exchange rate, the green line, you find that there's really not that much of a massive improvement. And still, we are not very significant in world trade. Certainly nowhere near China, which has overtaken the US, as you know. We are marginal. I mean, we are really less than 2% of global exports, 1.7 only. A larger percent of global imports, 2.4%, but that is actually a weakness in the Indian case. It has been a structural weakness in terms of the systemic trade imbalances that have been associated. Now, the big failure really is the absence of structural change. And this is a similar period to that of South Korea, early 60s to mid 2000s. And remember, that contains 2 decades of the big economic boom. Now, yes, the green line going up is per capita GDP, that does go up. But what's quite remarkable is, first of all, that there is a big decline in the share of agriculture in GDP. It falls to 1/3 of what it was, but there is really not equivalent decline in the primary employment. So primary share of GDP falls, primary employment share does not fall. And that is a real disaster because it means more and more people are trapped in this low productivity employment and it's generating less income as a share of the total economy. Meanwhile, if you look at manufacturing, it barely budges, either in GDP or in employment. It remains really very, very low. The share of employment is about 12%. I'm sorry, the share of GDP also less than 20%, about 18%. Now, this has affected poverty, human development, employment, and the environment and growth prospects. In other words, since the last period when poverty was declining, which is up till the beginning of the last decade, 2011, since then poverty has likely to have increased. We know that consumption has fallen. We know that employment has absolutely fallen. And therefore, clearly, poverty and material deprivation and food deprivation have all gone up. And we now have direct evidence from the latest National Family Health Survey that food deprivation and nutrition indicators have worsened significantly. And of course, the pandemic, for obvious reasons, has made everything much worse. Now, one of the features of this lack of transformation structurally has been the public provision of essential social services. Health, education, nutrition, sanitation has been extremely inadequate, and it's even fallen in per capita terms. Public spending per capita on health and education and nutrition was falling even before the pandemic. And appallingly, during the pandemic, it has fallen further. Now, the problem is that you can't really rely on service-based growth as a fundamental transformatory thing. You cannot, it's not sufficient. And I think lots of work, including recent work by Danny Roderick, shows that that's very true, that services can give you a temporary growth spurt, but it's not enough to affect productive transformation. But meanwhile, other investment is held up because there's a lot of bad debt privately. And there are lots of financial reasons for the fact that the corporate sector is burdened by significant levels of bad debt. The growth has been very unequal, both vertical and horizontal inequalities. We have two of the richest men, the 10 richest men in India, the 10 richest men in the world, 2 of them are from India. And yet we also have the largest number of hungry people in the world. And that number has grown very significantly in the pandemic. Employment is a huge challenge. I cannot describe what a huge challenge it is. Because now even insecure and fragile jobs are not being created. Earlier, the jobs that were being created were insecure, part-time, fragile, casual, without social security, without legal security. Now even those jobs are not being created. But meanwhile, we're getting all the adverse effects of growth. We're not getting the benefits for most of the people, but we're getting pollution, degradation of nature, overexploitation of natural resources, all of those issues. So what are the current concerns? The growth that we've had is based much more on finance, insurance, and real estate, the FIRE sector, rather than the productive real economy. There's a massive employment crisis, significant decline in women's recognized work participation, which really translates into more and more women doing unpaid work within and outside the household. So there's a growing reliance on the unpaid work of women, which has been a significant subsidy to the formal economy. We've had a fairly significant agrarian crisis now in the Indian economy for about a decade. And farmers' protests have been widespread and growing. They began about 3 years ago in a very major way, and then they snowballed when the government tried to bring in some laws that would further extend corporate control over agriculture. The year-long protest has forced the government to withdraw those laws, but the farmers are still protesting because their basic problems have not been resolved. Meanwhile, investment rates are falling. They've been falling for more than 10 years, but now investment is also declining in absolute terms for the last 3 years. Again, pre-pandemic, the decline started. And of course, the environmental problems, they threaten not just economic activity, but also health. I'm living in one of the most polluted cities in the world, Delhi. And we've achieved this status without, as I said, all those benefits of industrialization. And then, of course, combined with that, we have government responses, which are essentially authoritarian in an attempt to prevent any kind of dissent. Financial liberalization has been a very major reason for these adverse outcomes in India. A large part of the economic boom of the 2000s was in fact related to that financial liberalization because it attracted short-term capital very dramatically. But we know that these capital markets are imperfect. They have herd behavior, contagion. They're very responsive to economic forces that are outside our control. So in the global economy, if the US decides to raise interest rates or threatens to taper its quantitative easing, then we get capital outflow and crisis. even when we get inflows, it's not necessarily a good thing. We have self-fulfilling boom-bust cycles because the capital inflow causes domestic asset markets to appreciate, exchange rates to appreciate. That shifts the domestic incentives against tradable activities like exports or producing import substitutes, and shifts more investment into real estate, finance, and non-tradable activities. Now, these then end up having macroeconomic effects that are not really necessarily what policymakers might want. And in addition, when you have an open capital account, you have to have more self-insurance, the central bank holding more foreign exchange reserves. And that in turn creates fiscal restraint on the part of the government. It's so worried about capital flowing out or credit rating downgrades that it's unwilling to invest. And so the development project is left incomplete. In fact, this has really been one of the reasons why across the world, we've seen during the pandemic that fiscal responses were so different across North and South. You look at the advanced economies, this is data from the IMF, and massive fiscal support, additional spending. Whereas in the emerging and developing economies, a much, much smaller increase, even less than was spent after the global financial crisis. That's shown in the right-hand chart, that it's actually lower than was spent during the global financial crisis. And the low-income countries have spent pitiful amounts because they face other problems like sovereign debt concerns. Globally, the US has dominated the fiscal response. It accounts for more than 55%. Advanced economies together account for 80% of the total additional fiscal spending, which is crazy. Per capita wise, of course, it's terrible. Meanwhile, in the pandemic, we had the world's most stringent lockdown. And yet we also had the largest proportion of informal workers. We have 90% of our workers at a minimum do not have legal or social protection and get no compensation when there's a sudden break on their livelihood opportunities. Yet we had one of the most stringent lockdowns in the world. And of course, then it's no surprise that we then got really dramatic decline in GDP in that period. We had one of the biggest declines in GDP in that period of the lockdown, which lasted for about 3 months. Nevertheless, in fact, we then had a terrible second wave, as you can see in the chart on the right-hand side, a second wave that was much, much worse than the rest of the world. And this is an underestimate. It is now well known that not only the number of cases, but even the deaths have been massively underestimated by anywhere from 4 to 11 times. So the official death estimate is about 800,000 people dead from COVID-19. The actual is anywhere between 3,500 to 11,000. So, 3.5 million to 11 million. So really horrendous impact of the disease. The decline in GDP that we experienced was not just because of the lockdown itself, but because there was no social protection. There was nothing to make up for the fact that people were denied livelihood. The only thing that happened was a little bit of additional food distribution through the public distribution system, but it was very little compared to the loss in incomes of wage workers and self-employed workers. Nominal wages, even after that, have fallen. So even today, nominal wages across the country are lower than they were pre-pandemic. Women disproportionately lost jobs. I think that's true globally, and it is certainly true in Asia. And they have also disproportionately faced declines in wages. And so basically, there's no, this whole talk of the V-shaped recovery, it's actually only for the large corporate sector in India. It's not for the rest of the economy. And a large part of this is because government expenditure increased very little, only marginally, only 11% in nominal terms. That's 5% in real terms, because we had 6% inflation. That is simply not enough. That is, you get 5% increase means what? It goes up by 1 percentage point of GDP. Nothing in relation to what is required. And remember, the US and other countries are spending 25% of GDP additionally. Some of the most important heads, food spending, health spending, they actually did not go up. And transfers to states, which is the thing that did go up, was really what the central government already owed the states. So they were also short of money. The provincial, the state governments also didn't have money to deal with this. So why is the government behaving like this? Why is it not spending more? Well, one very important reason is the fear of capital outflows. So India has achieved supposedly being attractive to the global capital markets. So you can see the blue bars here, lots of gross inflows, but we've also had growing, rising outflows, the orange bars. And so government is so worried about the possibility of outflows that first of all, it is still engaging in self-insurance even during the pandemic. So the foreign exchange reserves have increased massively from, more than tripled over the decade. But what is really interesting is that they have gone up even during the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, it was about 450 billion. It's about 640 billion today. And this is foregone investment. This is investment that we could have done for the people and for diversification. And it's also expensive because you get very low returns on the reserves that you hold and all the assets you send abroad. And you have to pay high payments, returns, profit, interest, etc., on all the capital inflow. Despite all of that effort, the volatility in the exchange markets persists and the rupee still depreciates. So the lesson is really that, the growth that we had in the boom period did not lead to structural transformation. Essentially, it reflected the financial inflows because the Indian economy was discovered by global financial markets. But this deregulation of capital flows gave us higher volatility, financial instability, and now we even have external debt vulnerability in private bond markets. Yet investment rates are falling. So open capital markets didn't give us more domestic investment. Instead, they've actually given us rising capital outflows. And this fear of more capital outflows has restrained macroeconomic policy even during the crisis, which affects growth, it affects human development, it affects the material conditions of the people. So clearly, if we are going to go forward, we need a major change in strategy. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. That's really insightful material from you. And what I note here is that you say that you try to explain about the real conditions and what happened actually in India right now. And it's really interesting that you say that decline in GDP, not just because of the lockdown, but because of the lack of social protection. That's really interesting to talk about. And we will talk about this further. Okay, thank you very much. And now we go to the second speaker. Our second speaker will be Mr. Professor Olivier Ferrevu from Paris-Nanterre University of France. It is time for you to deliver the materials about the eco-determination as a theme for sustainability and corporate governance. But before that, allow me to read some curriculum vitae of Professor Olivier Ferrevu. Olivier Ferrevu, he became a technical collaborator at the Center for Economic and Social Research, or CRES, of the University of Paris-Nanterre, appointed professor of economics after obtaining the aggregations. He teaches at the University of Le Mans. There he became a vice dean of the Faculty of Law and Economics. Educational background, graduate from Institute of Political Studies in Paris in 1967. He also holds a DES in economics from the Faculty of Law and Economics of Paris, 1968. He obtained his third cycle doctorate in public finance at the University of Paris-Nanterre in June 1982, and his state doctorate in economics at the University of Paris, Pension Sorbonne, in November 1982. In 1983, he was admitted to the aggregation of economic and social science. Okay, and as a founder of economy conventions and achievements, author a number of books and publications in the field of economic. And as the same as first speaker, I got so many informations about journal publications, conferences, but I think it is enough already to describe our second speaker qualifications. So let's make it fast. Professor, the time and platform is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, okay. Well, I'm very grateful for your invitation and very glad to be with you and to participate to this discussion. Well, after the very interesting talk on macroeconomics, we will go back to microeconomics, and I will talk about the theory of the firm, but in connection with the general theme of your conference about sustainability. So we will share the screen. Alors, how do I do this? Okay, do you see? It's okay?
Not yet, Prof.
It is not okay for you? Ah. Alors, what is the problem? What is the problem? So, where is écran partagé? Alors, oui, ça va être là, je pense. Partagé. Ah. Okay. Is it better?
Yes, it's okay now, Prof.
It's okay now. Fine.
Okay.
Fine. So I will talk about the business firm, and I start with a summary of my talk. First, I will show you that there is a big, very ancient, very structural problem in corporate governance. And because of this problem, that will be my second point, I will try to show you that social sustainability problems, I mean with respect to, at least with respect to labor, and economic sustainability problems are very strongly interdependent. Then, third point, I will introduce something which is well known among the scholars about the theory of firms, which is called co-determination. And the minimum definition is half of the board consists in employee representative. And I will show that it is a solution to the structural problem in corporate governance. It is not only theoretical, because it is more or less, fourth point, more or less applied in so sometimes we are not conscious of that in half of the countries of European Union. And as for the question of ecological transition, I will show that something new, which we would call eco-determination, that is co-determination with a specific device for ecological transition, could be a solution for the ecological part. That is the plan of my talk. First, let us go back to, well, the fundamental bones of the theory of the firm, what is taught, unfortunately, in a majority of economics departments throughout the world. The conventional wisdom about the corporate governance since the decades 1970, 1980, well, is the following one. The shareholders are the owners of the firm, at least the corporation. And the top managers are the agents of the shareholders, who are the principal. And so, and it is taught in, well, indeed in all the departments of economy, the agency relationship is the basic model of the capitalist firm. And all this leads to what is called as shareholder value. That is, the firm should produce value, especially for the shareholder. They should even maximize the value provided to shareholders. That does not mean that they should not pay decent salaries and conform to all the legal apparatus, but, well, the shareholders are the true goal of the activity of the firm. This shareholder value is founded on very deep political reasons. Property rights of the shareholders are, well, we think that, are the owners of the firm. And also there are economic reasons. They are the residual claimants. They are paid as the last part. And so it is efficient for economy that we try to maximize this residual claim. Well, this is very standard microeconomics. One of the most useful and influent reference is the paper by Milton Friedman in 1970 with this provocating title, "The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase its Profits." But there are a lot, indeed thousands of papers about incentive theory, agency theory. I quote some. And indeed, this is the intellectual, the theoretical basis of what is known as the financialization era, which starts in 1970, 1980, until indeed in large sense until nowadays. Or now there is a problem. Let us go back to what is a firm. When as an economist you try to think about the firm, you should you should study connections between all these actors: shareholders, managers, workers, trade unions, customers, CEO, creditors, banks, states, local plans, and so on, neighborhood and environment. If you have the ambition to write theory of the firm, you should have a theory of all these connections. Well, indeed, it's quite an impossible task. Where is some order in this innumerable list of actors? Well, this is the largest list. We could call this enterprise, but it's quite impossible to write. You see, a theory, it would be of the highest complexity. There is another notion of a firm, and indeed, my first pedagogical lesson would be that to understand as an economist what is a firm, we need several notions, at least two, maybe three, and even probably more. A second notion of firm, much more common sense, well, it is a place where usually managers, workers are working together. But the interesting and indeed something we have forgotten, that there is a third, or maybe rather the first foundation notion, which is, well, alors, the words are very precise. In US, it's corporation. It's in Great Britain, it's company. In France, it's société. And it is not, it is something extremely precise. It is the legal persons which were created, founded by the first shareholders. And who is member of the corporation answer only the people who have who hold a share. For instance, workers, employees are not members of the corporation. And you immediately see the very deep political problems. The whole entity, which is called a firm, with this innumerable list of actors, is governed by a small subset, which is the set of shareholders. This is, you see, some very deep political problem, because it is completely contrary, opposite to the principle of democracy. You see, a small subset govern the whole set. But there is, and it is as important, there is also a logical problems. When you say that shareholders own the firms, what are you saying? Well, you are saying nonsense. Of course, shareholders do not own the whole list of actors you have on this slide. Well, it has no meaning, you see. Maybe you should say, well, shareholders, okay, they do not own the whole actors, which is called a firm. It has no sense, but there is something which is very meaningful, which is the corporations. And shareholders at least own the corporation. But that is not true either, as every legal student knows, even at the first course on business law. Why? Because the corporation or the company or the society in France is a person, a legal person, and you cannot own the person. And indeed, the principle of business law, the creation of the legal person, is to make the legal entity which is created independent of the persons who have founded it. And so it is a myth to speak about shareholder ownership. The shareholders do not own the corporation. What they own, and it is undisputable, they own their shares, and their shares give them some power, not very big power, but some power. But power is not ownership. So the top managers are not the agents of the shareholders. The agency relation is not the basic model of the capitalist firm. And so shareholder value has no legitimacy, at least if you are conscious of the difference between the legal person and the economic organization, which is called the firm. Well, this point may be surprising if you hear it for the first times, was pointed out by different scholars as quite quickly. A French scholar, Jean-Philippe Robet, 1999, and you could see his book Property, Power and Politics. An English scholar, Paddy Ireland, this is paper in Modern Law Review. American scholars, the late Margaret Blair and Lynn Stout, in this beautiful paper, A Team Production Theory of Corporate Law. Well, and indeed, if you discuss only 5 minutes with any legal experts, all I have just said, and which does not come from my own brain, is completely obvious. And so it was an enormous blunder that the Chicago Department of Economics have disseminated throughout the world. those were wrong ideas. And as we know, wrong ideas, if everybody share them, well, that produce real effect, which we could summarize under the label great deformation. I will just pinpoint the two major effects, one on labor and the other on environment. Let us go back to the structure, to the map of what is a firm. You see, as for the effect on labor, what is entailed by financialization? It is a kind of political, intellectual, cultural alliance between managers and shareholders and indeed all the financial systems. And you see, this is my red rectangle. And as you see with this map, workers are now at the end of the whole device. This is quite different of the previous period, a very prosperous one, which is called usually as Fordist, where there was a political alliance between, well, it is as if the red rectangle moves toward the right on my map, a political, intellectual, and cultural alliance between managers, workers, and CEO. And indeed, the financial system was severely constrained. So you see, now the workers are at the end of the process. And in a sense, they are the people who support the risk. Usually, it's traditional in economic theory to see that it's managers who support the risk. But no, in the neoliberal system, it is workers. That's the first point. And second, as for environment, you see the power of finance, and especially the fact that shareholders lead the game, have very negative effects on environment, simply because the theoretical criteria of performance is completely dominated by finance. So that's that's the situation. Now try to look for an issue. There is something that we have not yet tried. You see, financialization means an alliance between managers and finance. Fordism means an alliance between workers and managers. Well, why don't we try to use an alternative form, which could be called a pluralistic firm, where we try to make working together shareholders, managers, and workers. After all, they are the source. They are all three the sources of power in the firm. Well, you could think that, well, it is a very utopian hope, but in fact, what I have just described as a pluralistic firm, it exists. Its legal name is co-determination. And I will sketch rapidly that it could be the first step toward sustainability, at least social sustainability. Well, the principle is the following one. It is a very clever idea. Unfortunately, it has not been stressed in the theoretical literature, of course not in economics, but neither in law. Okay, it is the shareholders and only them who found the legal persons, but you can admit other stakeholders, other people, and especially the workers, to control the strategy of the legal person, of the corporation. And this is what means the fact that, well, in a strict definition, the board should be divided in two parts. One is shareholders, and one is board level employee representatives. And then you see the political and the logical problem also is in large part solved. Indeed, contrary to the conventional wisdom, and even what is taught in the Department of Economics in business schools and in the university, even in France, there is a majority of European countries which practice one form or another of co-determination. This has started just after the Second World War in three historical waves. The first country which innovated after the Second World War was Germany, and then Austria. A second wave intervened, and of course it is linked with political events after the social movements of May '68, and it implies nearly all the countries of Northern Europe. And there was a third wave after the fall of Berlin Wall. Many formerly planned countries from Eastern Europe have adopted one form or another of co-determination. I will give you, to be quick, the general scheme of the general situation in Europe. I have these two maps. Indeed, the European Union is divided in three models. One is there is no co-determination, a little less than half the countries, and this is the shareholder value. You see, the standard model in economics, well, comprises only less than half of the European country. And within the other half, there is co-determination, there are board-level employee representatives, but there are two models, a strong one, a full one, which is the German one, with half of the board consisting of board-level employee representative, and a middle one where there is only one, let us say, 1/3 of the board level. But this is in a part compensated by the minimum size of manpower of the firms to start this co-determination device. In Germany, half of the board, but it is for big firms, more than 2,000 workers. Under this level, only 1/3. But in the part of the European Union where you have only 1/3 of the board with employee representative, that is essentially Northern Europe, the minimum size is extremely low. It can go down as low as 25 employees. So this is the situation. And just to conclude my talk, I would suggest that, well, this device could fight very efficiently against neoliberal financialization, and we have seen some of the disastrous consequences in the previous talk, yes, it would help us to go toward ecological transition. And that could be called eco-determination. That is eco-determination. You see, you have this size, which is brown, with shareholders, managers, and workers belonging to the board. But beside, and I say beside the board, you have a new special instance, something which has just been created in France in business law through a law which is called Loi Pacte. We have invented the notion of société à mission, company or corporation with a mission. It is a little like a flexible purpose corporation or B Corp in the US in the United States of America. And this special committee deals with the responsibility of the firm, which is managed in a pluralistic way by shareholder, by manager and worker, but we have to deal with its responsibility towards the general society, especially on a ecological level and the economic consequences of the firm activity. Well, thank you for your attention after this very theoretical thought, but with important political consequences, I think.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Olivier, for your material. What I got from your material, we talked about the word of co-determinations. Okay, it's about co-determination representative of the employee that applied by 12 countries in the European Union. And then we've been taught about how to set the sustainability. The first one, we have to change about our paradigm and
Exactly.
yeah, let
exactly.
the worker take the responsibility. And co-determination is the first step towards sustainability, and you add the letter of E is the second towards sustainability. Okay, it's a great topic. We will talk about that further. Thank you again, Professor Olivier. And we go to our last but not least, the third speaker will be Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksih Arif Tiara, CA CSRS, will bring the material with the title of Circular Economy and Business Sustainability and Anthropocene Era. But before that, allow me to read the curriculum vitae of her. Okay. Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksih Arif Tiara, SA, AKMAK CA CSRS, occupation as a Dean, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jakarta, get her bachelor degree from University of Airlangga, master degree from the same university, Universitas Airlangga, and got her doctorate degree from the Universitas of Indonesia. I got so many informations about his achievement, her achievement as a reviewer, International Journal, Scopus, and National Journal of Indonesia, and about her publication, conference, but I think it is now already to describe our third speaker qualifications. So, Doctor, you have your time and the platform is yours.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, moderator, for the time. Please host to share my PPT. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Professor Jayati and Professor Olivier. That was an interesting topic. Yeah, we have listened to the material of Professor Jayati and Professor Olivier. I think those topics are relevant and relate with my topic here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share about circular economy and business sustainability in the Anthropocene era. Next. I would like to share 3 agenda in this moment. The first is Anthropocene era. What is the Anthropocene era? And then the second is circular economy, what and why. And then the third is business activities and sustainability concern. Okay, let's proceed to the first topic. The Anthropocene era. Perhaps some of you, the audience here, are unfamiliar with Anthropocene era. Here I have short video, brief explanation about Anthropocene era. Only 2 minutes. Let's check it out.
Have you heard about the Anthropocene? For the last 200 years, humankind has caused such a negative imprint on the environment that some scientists describe it as a new geological age, the age of human impact on Earth, or the Anthropocene. Since the pre-industrial era, and especially since the second half of the last century, the degradation of the environment and the climate change caused by humans have increased at a rate never seen in any other time in history. What are the causes of the Anthropocene? There are 2 main ones: the model of energy production and the resource consumption model. The energy produced from coal, oil and natural gas emits large amounts of greenhouse gases, the main causes of global warming. For its part, the growing population needs a greater use of natural resources that nowadays surpasses the capacity of the Earth to regenerate them. These human actions cause, among other consequences, changes in the water cycle, imbalances and destructions in the marine and terrestrial ecosystems, the increase of extreme meteorological phenomena, the acidification of the oceans, or the disappearance of the forests. Is it possible to stop the devastating impact we are having on the planet? Yes. Although there are certain irreversible consequences, we can still mitigate much of the damage caused to the environment. It is necessary to tackle the problem at its root, decarbonizing the economy and relying on renewable and non-polluting energy sources such as the sun, the water and the wind. Also, making a responsible and equal use of natural resources will help achieve a more sustainable system that can prevent the Anthropocene from becoming the last era of our planet.
Okay. Next. So from the video, we can derive some keywords of Anthropocene era. Anthropocene era is a period in which humanity has become a force that influences the planet already beyond various planetary boundaries. The negative consequences of human activities compromise social justice, ecological integrity, and economic stability. From this definition, we know that human activities have caused changes in our planet. It also have negative consequences on social justice, of course, ecological, integrity and economic stability. Next, I would like to present about the impact of human activities on planet. The first is overpopulation. We know that the more easier human to fulfill their needs makes the number of population increase enormously, right? So overpopulation cause impact on destruction of our planet. They have to explore the earth to fulfill their needs. And then pollution, of course, when people use fossil fuel as primary source of their activities, it can be cause pollution. We can see in big city right now, the level of pollution is very dangerous for our health. And then global warming. Global warming is the impact of greenhouse effect as carbon dioxide and methane, rain, flood in everywhere in some area in Indonesia especially, and some area experiencing dry weather, long dry season and wet water shortage. And then next, genetic modification. Genetic modification produce genetically modified animal, plant, and organism. If they are introduced to the environment, they can affect biodiversity. For example, existing species can be overrun, yeah, or more dominant others new species, and it will eventually can influence the balance of food chain. The next is ocean acidification. Yeah, ocean acidification is the ongoing decrease in the pH value of the Earth ocean caused by uptake of carbon dioxide, yeah, from the atmosphere. The main cause of ocean acidification is the burning of fossil fuels. Once again, fossil fuels. Yeah, ocean acidification is one of several effects of climate change on ocean. And the next is acid rain. Acid rain is any form of precipitation with acidic components such as sulfuric and or nitric acid that fall into the ground, yeah, from the atmosphere in wet or dry form. And then virus mutation. Right now we are experiencing COVID-19 virus mutation from the original version through the, what do we call, nowadays Omicron, right? Omicron, yeah. Virus mutation, there are now various diseases, yeah, caused by virus mutation because of the pollution. Once again, because of the pollution, and then overfishing caused by high population. People focus on profit orientation, greediness of the people, so they have to fulfill their food needs for exploration to the fish or ocean. It will cause specific species of fish will extinct. Yeah, and then the last is deforestation. We can see the phenomena to open new farming land. People will cut the tree. Yeah, people will take the woods from the forest, and then it will cause deforestation. Next. Now, circular economy. What is circular economy? Yeah, circular economy is the concept. Yeah, the concept of circular economy was first introduced by Rachel Carson in 1980. Firstly, the aim of circular economy is reducing inefficient resources. Yeah. The circular economy is actually a model of production and consumption which is involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbish, and recycling existing materials and products as long as possible. In this way, the life cycle of product is extended. So, in this definition, circular economy basically extending the life cycle of product. Previously, we know that company produce the product. We buy the product, we use it. Yeah. After that, we just throw away the product if there is broken, or we throw away the packaging of the product. So, in circular economy, we can reuse and recycling the product. Next, about circular economy and relate with SDG and recycling. Yeah. Circular economy and SGD and recycling. I read this from Muafi 2021. He evaluates 12,650 scopus from 2017 until 2020, and a little bit surprised that relationship between circular economy and business remain limited. So, based on Muafi, circular economy and SDG and recycling is closely related, and we as a researcher here, there is big opportunity for us to explore deeper or more, yeah, about the relationship of circular economy and business. We can do this for our next research. And next. And then I would like to explain circular economy. Why do we need to implement circular economy? The first is the world population is growing. Yeah, the demand of raw materials. However, the supply of crucial raw material is limited. And the second is finite supplies also means that European Union countries are dependent on other countries for their raw materials. I think it is not only in European, in other countries also dependent to other countries to fulfill their raw material. Particularly when this raw material is from earth or non-renewable source. And then extracting and using raw material has a major impact on environment. It also increases energy consumption and carbon dioxide emission. However, a smarter use of raw material can lower CO2 emission. And next, why do we need to implement circular economy? Nowadays, the implementation of CE has received a high level of concern not only to the consumer and to the company level, but it also has grown enormously in regional level, national level, and beyond that. The concept of CA is the antithesis of the production economy that put forward linear calculation. So CA is antithesis or beyond the linear economy. CE is used to achieve a sustainable economy, environmental quality, economic prosperity, and justice. And next, why do we need circular economy? Circular economy can also be used to maximize and optimize the potential of its material, as well as can restore materials that we have reached their final age with environmentally friendly technology innovation. So in principle, CE is based on the concept of the 5R: reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, refuse, or other terms, but basically this 5R with optimal production level in utilizing natural resources by minimizing natural exploitation, minimizing environmental pollution, and reducing emission and waste level by implementing a sustainable concept such as sustainable development. So I mentioned before next the linear economy and circular economy. What I have mentioned before, we can see the comparison between linear economy versus a circular economy. In the left side, linear economy, the life cycle of product is very short, right? Make and dispose. You can imagine how many ways, in this model of linear economy, how much pollution carbon produced from this model, because to take raw material, most of product need to explore extremistically, natural resources from the earth by cutting the trees, for instance, for producing paper or tissue. Explore the ocean to fossil oil, for plastic raw material and etc. And then the company just make and dispose the waste, just dispose the waste, dispose the what do we call the packaging of the product. And then we have to move to circular economy. In the right side of this slide, we can imagine the waste produced from this model, is less than the linear model. This also can reduce garbage because the raw material of the production is made from recycling or reuse the previous product. And then it can save environmental. Also, we can reuse the garbage by sorting the garbage from the household. Can be also a source of income for society. So by circular economy, we can increase social justice, of course, can improve prosperity, improve environmental quality, and align with SDG. Circular economy, we make, the company make, and then the customer use the product, and then after they use the product, they can recycle business activity. How this CE model can be implemented in business activity, I will give you some example. For instance, in Sweden, in Sweden, that or level recycling plastic garbage is around 53. In Sweden, zero waste is become national program, which is organized by the government. You can see the website of the program from Sweden. And then, for instance, in Denmark, the government implied tax for every waste disposal. So this can force companies to process their waste instead of they have to pay certain cost aspects. Yeah. And then what about business activity of big multinational company like Coca-Cola? Yeah, Coca-Cola has campaigned their program Work Without Waste by recycling all product packaging like cans or Coke bottle, Coke bottle, plastic and glass. In Indonesia, also various companies have recycling program like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has issue or campaign the plastic reborn, which is the plastic waste is used for material for umbrella. And then in Indonesia, for instance, Dan One in Labuan Bajo has program recycling bottle as new product known as Aqualife, which made from 100% plastic recycling, and the new product itself 100% can be recycled. Next, we can see, the example of Aqualife. This product, this is not endorsed for Aqualife, but to give a sample, what circular economy can be implied. For the example is Aqualife. This is a product. When you see this product in the market, you can know that 100% of this product is recycling that can be reused after you drink the water. And what I have mentioned before, the national program in Sweden, recycling in Sweden, how the government have committed into zero waste. They have 93% to recycling their glass product, their glass garbage, 49% plastic, and 75% paper. This is example how business activity and circular economy has strong connected. Next, we go on in business activity and sustainability concern. Circular economy, as I mentioned before, is a new model of economy. This is become global awareness, as I mentioned before, in Sweden, in Denmark. Not only in Indonesia, CE has become global concern in many countries in the world, and the governments of some country has set and embedding the CE in their policy. By setting policies toward CE or eco-friendly, this will eventually force company to be shifting their business activity from 1P profit into triple P, or profit, planet, people, profit, and planet. And the next, global awareness, how the climate change has attained global awareness. Since 1990, business concern has been shifting. Previously, companies focused only in profit, but since 1990s, business already concerned with impact of their activities on environment and life of future generation. This is aligned with sustainability development goals and sustainability concern. If we speak about Indonesia, how the government support the sustainability concern, this is sort of example, what have Indonesian government and regulator do regarding the sustainability concern. The first is government policy, issued by the Financial Service Authority, or OJK, has issued and implement OJK number 51 2017, regarding the sustainability reporting as mandatory for companies. And then the industrial ministry also has program green industry focus on sustainable industry development, which is encouraging companies to shifting their operation toward eco-friendly industry. And then from the Ministry of Finance in Indonesia, Mrs. Minister ya, Ibu Sri Mulyani previously has warned of all of us that the big problem is not COVID, but climate change is the big problem. We can see and experience in Indonesia extreme weather. Yeah, some districts have flood, stormy wind, and the government have to do real action to prevent the condition even become getting worse by issue some regulation to limit the business and force the business to be more eco-friendly. By one of the regulation is implied carbon tax, yeah, effective per 1 April 2020 next year. Indonesia will imply carbon tax. If I'm not mistaken, is 30 rupiah per kilogram carbon dioxide. Besides that, the governments can force companies to be more sustainable, yeah, cares about society and eco-friendly by campaign the sustainability finance. OJK has set a sustainable finance roadmap phase, yeah, by encouraging bank and financial service institutions to focus on financing only in company which have sustainable concern or green corporation. And the last is how the attention of the people. Government also has regulation, especially to state-owned enterprises or BUMN, are mandatory to implement CSR programs, which is program intended to society and people empowerment. And next, this is sustainability reporting trend. I have mentioned that CSR is mandatory, and the business are shifting, yeah, from profit to triple P. So we can see how company report their sustainability activity in sustainability reporting. From this graphic, we can see globally the attention or the concern of company to sustainability has inclined from 1993 until 2020. Yeah, in the blue, yeah, dark blue, we can see N100 company from 12 to 80%, and the light blue line, we can see G250 companies incline from 35 until 66 and 96%, which issue the or produce the sustainability reporting. And then next, in Indonesia, sustainability reporting from OJK, the number of bank issue, the number of bank issued the SR company based on sector publish the SR in the right side. And then in the bottom, we can see the financial service industry who issue the SR, the percentage, yeah. And then the bottom and the last diagram pie, we can see the industry who issue the SR. So this is implied that in Indonesia also sustainability reporting has become awareness, yeah, will become concern in company in Indonesia also. And next, to summary my presentation, yeah, the first is climate change, global warming, virus disease is a strong signal how human activities has changed the planet, or we can call it Anthropocene era. And the second is circular economy is a model economy focusing on economy and environmental, which implement in 5R: reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and reuse. Refuse is needed as a response to facing and fixing, also to mitigate the environmental destruction in Anthropocene era. And then the third is business activities are more concerned to sustainability since 1990s. Companies have been shifting from profit to triple P, people, planet, and profit. But triple P is not enough. Yeah, it should be extended to be more complete, to be completer and more comprehensive, as demanded by the Anthropocene era. By implementation in linear economy is no longer sufficient, and business must be transformed into circular economy model to achieve SDGs. And a circular economy needs strong commitment, yeah, from various parties, business, regulator, government, academician, society also. Yeah, we have to commit together to save the planet. Okay, thank you for your attention.
The fact that human activities have changed our planet, and it is time for us to redirections our life from the linear to the circular economy. Very interesting to talk, and we will talk about that further. Okay, thank you very much again for all the three speakers, and it is time for us to get to conduct some discussions. Please note, all the participants and the panelists, you can deliver your questions by English or Bahasa, and do not hesitate us to know your question on chat box, or you can use raise your hands through this platform features. Okay, and as I said before, that I'm not alone. I have Mr. Jerry Marmens, PhD, as the co-moderator. Hello, Mr. Jerry, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
It's really very good, yeah. All the three speakers really very good. Professor Jayati Ghosh presented a very good explanation about macroeconomics and development. And then there is a kind of a problematic issue raised by Professor Ghosh related to human development, and then also employment and environmental issues. And then also regarding the problem of the failure of structural change is also mentioned by Professor Ghosh. And then my question is, do we really believe to globalization as the road for increasing and maintaining the welfare of society? Because like Professor Oliver mentioned, that the governance issues, in this case, the owner of the shareholder of the company cannot be the main determinants, in this case, because of the transformation from old-fashioned to co-determination, and then the last one is eco-determination. Really focus on the importance of society and also environment in this perspective. So, like Professor Jayati Ghosh mentioned about the failure of globalization, although mentioned also the positive contribution. My question is it possible that the phenomena of immense-rising growth exists? If the governance in the macro aspect is not forced by the system. And regarding the discussion exposed by Professor Oliver, my thinking is, do you think that this is related to crowdsourcing based of managing the company? Because like extending the role of workers and also the role of society is very important, because of the contribution of the company will be better comparing to not considering these factors. So crowdsourcing, or meaning increasing the role of customers or increasing the role of stakeholders becomes very important. And then I will relate this to the issue of digitalization, because in the era of digitalization, sometimes the digital inequality make the situation become worse, and then digitalization negatively contribute to the improvement of the company. So what do you think about this phenomena? And then Ibu Dian, very interesting. You mentioned about circular economy and the importance of environment. I recall in 1972 there was a book or report written by Club of Rome. The title is Limit to Growth. Actually, in 1970s, this issue already raised by a group of people, and we call it the Club of Rome. If it maybe Professor Oliver know this very well, right? Because of they already made a kind of model that tried to predict there is no future, or there is no more economic growth in the future because of the use of environment or resources, natural resources already exhausted. And then finally, I try to relate this to Thomas Piketty critics. Yeah, Thomas Piketty said that, for example, if the rate of return on capital is higher than the economic growth of economy, this means that capitalism fail. Who pays the rate of return of the capital if the economic growth is lower than the return of capital? So the last book of Thomas Piketty mentioned about, is it the time for socialism? Is it the time for crowdsourcing? Is it the time for eco-determination? And then is this the time for focusing on human development and environment and circular economy that mentioned by Ibu Dian and also Professor Goss? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jerry Marman, PhD, for the questions. And it's really interesting issue, what Mr. Jerry Marman said. What do you think about that? This question to all the speakers over here, to Mrs. Professor Jayati Ghosh, and to Professor Feveru, and of course to our last speaker, Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksono. How about the issue that offered by Mr. Jerry? What do you think about, maybe you can say, is the fall of the capitalizations, or it is time to enter the new era of socialized, as I said before? And what do you think about this, to all the speakers? Maybe first from Professor Jayati Ghosh, do you have any idea for this? Okay. I see Professor Jayati withdraw herself from this meeting room. So how about you, Professor Olivier? Do you have any opinion about this issue?
Thank you for Professor Marman for this very comprehensive overview of the three talks. It's a very fine discussion you are opening, and very ambitious one. At the end of your comments, you mentioned my colleague Thomas Piketty, and of course he has made great progress in the analysis of the present capitalist system. But maybe you have noticed that now is quite favorable to co-determination, and indeed it's a big part of his last chapter, and we of course he has his own area of competence, especially of tax, and that would be very important. But we share the idea that changing very deeply the internal governance of firms would be a big step, not of course the only step, surely not, but a very big steps toward a change in the systems. Let us make a mental experiment. Imagine that, well, every business firms in my continent, but even in the world, is now working under the regime of co-determination. And that means that half of the board of directors is consists in half shareholders and half of workers. Is it still capitalism? Not really, since you see shareholders share their power with workers. But is it socialism? No, since, well, money and finance has its role. And indeed, you cannot run a business without money. So I think that, and it is a lesson of my small intellectual experiment, that some European countries in the center of Europe, in the north of Europe, have invented, well, the beginning of a really alternative system, which is not really socialism, which has failed, as we know from the history of the 20th century, and it is no longer capitalism. The last part of the problem, of course, is connected with what was so convincingly presented in the last talk on circular economy and transition ecology. And my own opinion is that co-determination is a precondition. It is not the only condition, of course, but it is a very important precondition to change the criteria of performance of firms. You see, if you have only shareholders on the board, well, what is their common language? Their common language is finance, the usual accounting standards. If you have also workers who are human beings, after all, who are consumers, who live near the factories, well, the other criteria would begin to be really influent. And so the very big step, we have not any of the talks deal with this question. We have to change the international accounting standards, but that's a very big piece of work. But you made a wonderful, comprehensive comment on the 3 talks, and that was very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Très bien.
And then to Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksih, do you have any comment for this idea?
Yeah, thank you, Pak Jerry, for the comment. Yeah, I have read also. Yeah, this condition has been predicted. Yeah, if even since 70s, yeah, Club of Rome, and the prediction by Thomas regarding for your question, is it the moment or the era we are shifting, yeah, from capitalism to socialism? We can see, I think it is now the era of crowdsourcing, the era of collaboration, the era of sharing economy. Yeah, we can know like Gojek, yeah, for instance, is the good example of share economy, which is the capitalism, the one who have big capital is not controlling or dominating the market or the economy. And the important is how government encouraging business move toward linear economy to circular economy is more important. Yeah, how the government encourage business to stop using non-renewable source or shifting to reuse recycling material is important. For instance, we can know yeah, we can see now circular economy has there are many business, new business, new startup business. For instance, in small medium enterprises, now they can operate or have business for household garbage, yeah, process household garbage like bank sampah or garbage bank. This along with digitalization, there are now we can see startup or SME business concerned about waste process, and they also collaboration with big company to support the raw material from the waste, yeah, from household waste. Now I think it is can improve the economy of the society, and the benefit will be bring benefit for all the society in Indonesia, of course. I think that is my response to Pak Jerry.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Dr. Dian, for the response. That's all, Mr. Jerry. You can go. Okay.
Yeah, there are some questions on the chat box. Maybe,
Yep.
yeah, Pak Jakaria can read for the Professor Oliver and Ibu Dian.
Okay, thank you very much.
Many good questions.
Yeah. I see Mr. Aswin Rifai raise his hand. Maybe you can deliver your question directly. Aswin Rifai, okay. Please, Mr. Aswin Rifai, you can deliver your question.
Can you hear my voice?
Sure.
Okay. I have question to Professor Olivier. My question is, we believe that people are the key to delivering successful, sustainable corporate governance outcome, right? So the value of an investment is not necessarily merely about returns, right? There's a growing number of investors and other corporate stakeholders are calling for their money to go toward a stock of funds or fund that are both profitable over the long term and reflective of their social value, right? So increasingly, board members and management team are going public with sustainability commitment, inspiring us all with ambitious, well-intentioned statement about what they are going to achieve, right? So, but when organizations make this sustainability statement, they are often missing key details. Yeah? And for example, how does the organization manage to achieve two sustainability goals? What exactly is its approach to sustainability? Is there a concrete change plan in place or a framework? And if so, who is going to deliver it? How does corporate governance integrate with sustainability in terms of providing a framework, a model, or a relations and process and strategy to organization? So I think, what is your prognosis on this, Professor? Maybe you can give your perspective on this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aswin Rifai. So what do you think about this, Professor Olivier, about the sustainability and how the company corporation right now to get their sustainability?
Thank you. You have asked indeed a lot of questions, but I think the center of your question is, do we really need something as strong as a change in corporate governance, a step toward co-determination? Do we really need, because after all, governance now stresses the questions of ecological transitions. There are many private initiatives towards circular economy, as it was said in Indonesia, but also in my country. And even managers now are very receptive to the demands of the consumers, and they take care of their reputation toward consumers. But my point is, but on a very general level, if we let simply these trends evolve spontaneously, I think it is going in the right way, but it goes in the right way very, very slowly. And indeed, there is a lot of rhetorics, what we call greenwashing, you see.
Yes.
And I am indeed, I am hearing many beautiful discourse by managers, but in the actual working of the firms, I am more skeptical. And in France, we had a beautiful example of this, which goes in the sense of my skepticism. Maybe you know the French firm, which is called Danone, which makes many milk products and so on. It was the first firm in France last year to adopt the statute of Société à mission, B Corp in a sense. So it was adopted by the General Assembly of Shareholders. They changed their statutes, and now Danone, of course, it must earn money, but also it have a mission of delivering free food, especially in Africa. Well, wonderful. But less than 12 months after, the CEO was ejected, was eliminated by financial funds, very minority. They hold a minority of shares, but they criticize the CEO for having a rate of return which was, well, it was positive, but not enough. And so less than 12 months after all the stakeholders, the shareholders have adopted the notion of a mission for Danone, the CEO was repudiated. And what is very interesting from my point of view, that in the board, there were 2 representatives of the employees. And both of them, it is not a secret, I'm sure, we know that they defend, they protect their CEO. It was not enough because we have no real co-determination in France. So my point is that, of course, all the consumer association, all the government
Board of management, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly.
So, so is it, should it be some kind of the government should put some regulation to ask the company to have their board of management be represented by the labor or by the worker or something like that?
Exactly. Our European experience is that, well, something like co-determination, indeed, it is approved by trade unions. It is approved by intelligence managers, but spontaneously they do not decide it. And so the ultimate decision comes from the law. The government, even in Germany, even in Northern Europe, at some times the government says, okay, we adopt a law which creates, for instance, co-determination. So yes, it needs an initiative at the parliament and so at the government level.
Yeah, I think that is what is the weakness here in Indonesia, or maybe in some Asian countries, that not many companies are having a representative of labor in their board management. But that is a good idea. I mean, that is a good concept from you, Professor Olivia. I think I'm very satisfied with your response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Pak Ahmad Nur already raised hand.
Okay. Mr. Ahmad Nur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zakaria and Mr. Jerry. Professor and our Dean, it's very honored to have your discussion in these sessions. First of all, I want to ask to our Dean, Budian, the concept of the business sustainably actually still expensive. The affordability of the low middle class industry is still limited. So therefore, government support is needed, such as the subsidies or fiscal incentive for a circular concept of the economy. I think it's without it, it seems that industry awareness is still far away. Well, as we know that the government ability is also during the pandemic COVID is limited due to the large deficit for the handling the COVID-19. So where should we start in such conditions? In the other hand, we need the government interventions to run the business of sustainability. And another things, we don't have any money to do that. And regarding to that subject, I want to ask to Professor Oliver, with the terminology, it is very interesting with the eco terminations. It is like the concept when you have the social responsibility, corporate social responsibility actually. In my perspective, sometimes when we facing the differences between the financial thing and the social responsibility, we already have the model, which is the corporate, because they thinking about the maximizing profit. So the profit that have the achieved for the 1 year, it should be have the portion to the social, to the community, like the social CSR, or which is maybe 5 or 10% for the profit, give to the society, and then the society can have the benefit for the company. So when we look at that concept and then compare with your concept, which is the eco determinations between how give the chair to the worker and give the chair to the society in the board of the commissioner. So it's like seems similar, but I don't know what your concepts regarding that, which better, that the thinking of the shareholders still financial, but they have the impose the particular percent of the profit go to the society, or just change the shareholder. What do you think, Prof? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahmad Nur Hidayat. The first questions will be to Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksih about the affordability of the government to reach the concept of circular economic. And then to Mr. Professor Olivier about the corporate social responsibility and the concept of eco determinations, as we know that the representative of the labor and the board of management, what is the use of them, and the beneficiary for this concept. Okay, the first session will be to Mr. Dr. Dian Wicaksih. You can answer the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Zek. Yeah, thank you. Nice question, Pak Ahmad Nur Hidayat. Of course, we need a government policy to accelerate the implementation of circular economy. If without a government policy, without encouragement by the government, we can stuck on the linear economy, right? The circular economy only as a plan, as a dream for us, yeah, especially in the middle class industry. Actually, I want to give some advices or some recommendation for the government. This is in this room we have Pak Jerry Merman. Yeah. So actually, I want to promote that we need tax incentive, for instance, for the company who has implemented the reuse and recycle program. So it is it can be accelerate the CA by giving the tax incentive, for instance, for the companies who move to the non-renewable source of energy, or shifting from the natural material to the reuse or recycling product, for instance, in Danwan, for instance. So the government must or should give benefit for those companies who focus in exploring the new way to be more eco-friendly. And then in what kind of policy that government can give, yeah, to encourage or to accelerate the CA is, for instance, give the, what do we call, low middle class industry the subsidy for the energy. This is aligned with the national program President Jokowi to shifting from non-renewable energy to new energy and renewable energy. So I think the government should give subsidy in energy, yeah, to the industry, for instance, yeah, to support to lower the cost, yeah, to lower the cost of the low middle class industry to implement the CE. And then what I have mentioned before, carbon tax. I think carbon tax is can be a source of revenue, yeah, for the government. The benefit is for financing the what do we call, eco-friendly company, or finding the new way of the eco-friendly energy. And then the carbon tax also forcing the big company, yeah, that nowadays still using or explore the fossil fuel to, and what do we call, to produce carbon dioxide. So the carbon tax can force the big company to shifting from non-eco-friendly to become eco-friendly. And then the campaign, yeah, the government should campaign more about the spirit of reuse, and recycling, yeah, in society, in wide society. The slogan, this is not only the slogan, but the government must have the, what we call, the government should be as a good example of the reuse, and recycle. This can be as a social awareness that can change the society habit also. So they can also collect the garbage, and then they can transfer it to the low middle class industry, some kind like crowdsourcing, yeah. So they can collect the raw material from the household, maybe, so they can lower the cost of production. I think this effort can be one of the what do we call, specific policy, yeah, for the government to accelerate the circular economy in Indonesia, especially in supporting low middle class industry to having the more eco-friendly business. I hope this can answer your question, Pak Ahmad Hidayat.
Thank you, Bu. Very clear and solid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad Nur Hidayat. And then to you, Mr. Professor Olivier, what do you think about the questions?
Yes, thank you for this question. Of course, you are right. There is family link between corporate social responsibility and co-determination. And it is indeed very interesting to think about of the convergence, but also the differences. Corporate social responsibility, it is soft law, and it depends on the goodwill of the managers. It depends also on incentives. And indeed, my prestigious, my very famous colleague, Jean Tirole, said that you do not need to change the corporate governance. You can keep on shareholder value, but with internalizing all the externalities. And he said that, well, it is the best system. Shareholder value, it's very clear, very neat, very simple. But of course, we should internalize all the externalities. But the point is that it's very, very difficult to do that. And well, if it was possible, it would be a good thing. But I think it will, if it is possible, it will be very low. And I have another criticism that, you see, internalizing the externalities, it says that we are still in the language of markets. But in a sense, we suffer in our present world of too much market language. And it is a little, it's a kind of paradox to say that we should extend even more the language of markets. And so I favor rather hard law because there, in our experience, our sociological experience of boards, if you do not change the rules of the power, change is very, very slow if there is a change. And second and last, I think the point, now I open a little the scope of all the discussion. I think the question is not a question, only a question of internalizing the externalities. It's a question of changing our evaluation systems, our accounting standards. I have some friends and colleagues who are doing intensive research on this. You see, we have three kinds of capital in the working of a business firm. You have the social capital, you have the human capital, and you have the natural capital. The accounting rules demand that you maintain strictly the value of the financial capital, what is called in law social capital. Well, we should do the same for human capital and for natural environment. You see, I am a labor economist at the origin and the beginning of my career, and I've been always disappointed by the fact that in the accounts of a business firm, labor is not a value. It is only a cost. But what can you do in a firm without labor? You see, well, that would lead, drive a change of paradigm in, you see, in the account standards, and indeed that would be the hard part of eco-determination. We could talk during hours on this question, so I think I should stop my answer here.
Thank you, Professor. Maybe I will continue the question from Mr. Ahmad Nur Hidayat. What do you think about the advantages? What is the benefit when the firm, the corporations apply the eco-determinations? I mean, in terms to we took the labor, the worker into the board of the management. What is the benefit actually from that concept?
May I may I say a word to my colleague, Mrs. Dianwi Kasik? Could I?
Okay, Professor. Do you have any question to Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksi? You mean that?
Yes, no, not a question, just I see a very interesting connection between your talk and mine, because in the best examples you have given of circular economy, you mentioned among European countries, Denmark and Sweden. And so these are two countries with co-determination. And you see, well, that makes me think a lot about the connection between our two topics. I just want to say that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. I see a lot of hand over.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Jerry.
Yeah, I tried to extend the question from Mr. Aswin Rifai regarding the importance of labor or worker. Like, is it possible also to consider about consumers? You know, consumers in the board of the management, because like in banking organization, we know that in the total asset of bank, actually the shareholder, the owner, only have 8% according to the minimum capital requirement based on Basel. But let's say in the real condition is about 20 to 30%. But still 70% of the total asset is actually owned by the customers, right? By the people who deposits the money. And from this perspective, is it possible also to extend the concept of eco-determination to also include, like you actually in general, you mentioned about the society, right? And also the environment. So is it also possible to include customers in this perspective? So in the board, or maybe like in the lines of defense of the governance and the governance system of the company. Yeah, I just want to to extend the question of Mr. Aswin Rifai. Okay, so what's your opinion or your comment, Prof. Oliver?
I would not use all the time which could be used to my colleague on the circular economy, but I would like to answer, because what you said, yes, it's a very fine point. If you have a majority of individual shareholders, well, they could, in the present state of business law, they could already vote when they go to the General Assembly of Shareholders, vote to representatives of capital, you see, which defend their point of view about transitional ecology. But you are suggesting, so you see, it could already function in the present legal systems. I am not sure. Well, I think now in the General Assembly of Shareholders, there is a real pressure on the manager and CEO to go towards ecological transition. That works already. But I think you suggest something which is different, which is we could put not only representative of shareholders and representative of workers, we could put a representative of consumer within the boards. Well, of course, it is an idea for which I have some sympathy, but it is very difficult to implement, very difficult when you try to think about an effective procedure to recruit consumers. How can you select them? How many? And so on. And in my discussion with legal experts, they think that it would be better to leave the board as it is, in order that the responsibility of the shareholders, the responsibility of the workers was full, not to dilute it, and to create, beside the board, another instance, a sort of committee which deals with the responsibility of the firms towards, well, all questions concerning consumers and all questions concerning ecological transition. And I add one more point, is that it was of course not your case, but when I have sometimes this objection in France, and this objection is really hypocrite, not very fair. It is a mean for some part of the business association to avoid the entrance of workers. And they said, oh no, that's 19th century. It is the fight between labor and capital. No. You should rather put consumers, because you see, imagine consumers within a board in front of a big CEO. Of course, his power will not be attacked, you see. But this is a good point, good discussion.
Thank you.
Another not for me, for professor, when you say Sweden and Denmark is like the circular economy, but such country have the very high income per capita. When you compare with the like the emerging economies, we still have the problem with the, you know, maximizing profit. It's more important rather than the environmental sometimes. So it is like there's a huge gap between the high income per capita and the middle income, low middle income per capita. So I don't know, because the how to convert convergence this difference, it is quite difficult. I think last previous discussion we talking about the global governments. Maybe the key solutions for this kind of the environmental sustainability and eco-determination, it's come from the top to the bottom. I mean, maybe we need to really consider the serious corporate among the nations, so we can address this problem together as the human being and in the stay in the earth. I think, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Again, Mr. Ahmad Nur Hidayat. Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksono, do you have any opinions about the questions? How we compare the height in per capita income to, you know, different countries, different treatment? Maybe you have any opinion about that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course, I agree with Pak Ahmad Nur Hidayat. You cannot compare just like apple to apple, yeah, with Sweden, or what do we call Sweden and Denmark, right? Because when we talk about mindset, the first is we talk about mindset, how our society mindset about waste management, right? Maybe in the country which have more educated people, yeah, which have more educated people and which have lifestyle is concerned about the waste management, it can be compared to emerging country like Indonesia. Our homework, our to-do list is still long, yeah, to move toward a linear economy, toward circular economy, because basically if we see our society, if we see surrounding us, our neighborhood, we can see many people still throw their waste or garbage directly into the river. So this is hard work, yeah, for us as academician, I think, to change society mindset regarding the waste management first. If we are succeed to change the mindset regarding the environmental, I think one big problem already solved, and then we can move toward to another problem, which is can be accelerated by the government. Yeah, I hope this is can answer your concern, Pak Ahmad Tur Hidayat.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Dr. Dian Wicaksono, and we go to the next questions. Maybe it will be the last questions for the sessions. We have Mr. Tata Mutasya. You raise your hand, right? If you can deliver your questions.
Thank you, Pak Zakaria.
Thank
Actually,
you.
I have a question for each speaker, but Professor Jayati left already, and my question to Ibu Dian Wicaksono somehow already delivered by Pak Ahmad Nur Hidayat. So I have one question to Professor Olivier regarding the co-determination. In my understanding, it's like the co-determination is like self-correction of capitalism. Yeah. And from our experience, the advantage of capitalism vis-a-vis socialism is in its self-correction, right? Socialism fails, but capitalism can improve continuously. In regards of this co-determination, I'm wondering, I understand that this is necessary, but wondering that this is sufficient as well. Let me give analogy to democracy. Democracy, including in Indonesia, and I think across the world, now is shrinking. General election is there, and if rationally, it can bring large people aspiration, the large numbers of people, but apparently it doesn't happen now. It represents like the 1%, a small number, small groups of people, the elites now. And my question is in regarding of co-determination, when for instance the representation of labor is there in board of directors, or even from broader society, if you are talking about the environmental issues, whether it will be sufficient, to improve the corporate sustainability, and to improve the sustainability. Technically, for instance, it is possible that the representative of laborers can be captured by the corporation, or even a representation of the society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tata Mutasya. Give to you, Prof. Olivier, what he thinks about the questions about the sustainability and the co-determinations. What the link between them?
Yes, you ask the question of democracy, and in my view, and I think it is not only my view. Well, co-determination is a building block of what we could call social democracy or economic democracy. We have the tendency, maybe especially in France or in all countries, to link democracy only with the state, general elections, the parties, and so on. I think what is very, very deep in the question of co-determination, it is an attempt which was imaginated even without being completely conscious of it, imaginated to put a conception of democracy within the organization of the private organization. It's an attempt to put democracy within private powers, because firms are private powers. We have a lot of political thinking about democracy at the level of public, the state, public powers, but not at the level of private powers. Now, when workers are put inside the board, they are put inside the board of a legal entity they have not created. And that's extraordinary, because it is the first shareholders who create the legal entity. And nevertheless, the shareholders accept not to be alone, you see, to govern the board. They accept the presence of other parts. And in my mind, well, this is an extension of the notion of democracy at a lower level. And in a sense, it's democracy bottom up. Whereas you see the general election, the rules about the press, the political parties, and so on, it is democracy top down, and we need both, you see. And just one more point. You see, co-determination was invented by some European countries after the Second World War. And something which is not very well known, even in Europe, is that when we started the European Unions in the 50s, the 60s, the first countries who created, it was called European Community at this time, before the European Union. And there was a very deep discussion between the 6 countries, members of the first European Community, to think about the political principle to create a union. And they all agree that there was, of course, political freedom and free competition. But at this time, and unfortunately it is not the case now, also they think at the necessity of unifying the business law between all the countries. And there was, at this time, during the 70s, a huge discussion about the opportunity of generalizing co-determination according to the, for instance, to the German model. And it was this discussion terminated at the end of the 70s, at the beginning of the 80s, because Ronald Reagan in the United States, Margaret Thatcher in Great Britain, it was the beginning of the financialism era. I think we should go back to this period. Thank you for a remark.
Thank you, Professor Olivier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Professor Olivier and Mr. Tata Mutasya for the questions. And I think that's enough for the discussion sections. And we have a great time. We have a great conversations with all the speakers. And what I can note from this discussion as a conclusion is that capitalism is not being able to generate successful industrializations. And the second one is the concept of eco-determination to reach the sustainability on corporate governance, and the Anthropocene era, and about the need of movement from linear economic to the circular economic. And we go to the last sections is about the closing statement from all the speakers. So for the first opportunity, I will let the Professor Olivier to give your closing statement, Prof.
You wish I said some concluding words? That yes, it is.
Yeah.
I did not. Okay. Well, first, I am very grateful for having been invited to this discussion, which I think was very, very serious. We had the macroeconomic point of view with the first talk. There was the analysis at the level of firms with my talk, and then we have a very deep and positive thinking in the last talk about the necessity of going towards circular economy. And I think we have succeeded, all three of us, to have presenting, I think, a very large view of the actual problems of sustainability. And I'm very grateful for being invited to this general discussion. And I congratulate the organization of this discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Olivier, for the statement. And then to our last speaker, Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksi, do you have anything to say as a closing statement?
Yeah. Yeah. From this afternoon discussion, we have a lot of input. Yeah, we have a lot of new insight from Professor Olivier, from Professor Jayati. Yeah. And then from me, yeah, now we are experiencing changes, right? From climate change, social changes, and getting worse by the pandemic COVID-19. So we must transform our mindset first, yeah, our way of life. Yeah, we have to transform, become eco-friendly, become more aware to our lifestyle habit, to become save energy, become zero waste. It can be initiated from ourselves and our neighborhood. Yeah, I think this will eventually can happen. Yeah, the economy shifting from linear economy toward circular economy. I think this is enough for me. Thank you for your attention and your time. Thank you, Professor Olivier. Thank you, Pak Zek. Back to you, Pak Zek.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Dr. Dian Wicaksi. Within the closing statement from both speakers, we also finish our webinar today.
Yeah.
Before I leave this stage, I would like to say thanks to all speakers and of course to all the participants for your kind attentions. I'm sorry, Mr. Jerry, do you have something to say?
Yeah, in Indonesia we have Pancasila, and then I think Pancasila also concerned very much and give attention seriously about the environment and also the neighborhood, the society, and then the integrity of creation. So it's actually the integrity of creation that we try to focus on in our discussion about circular economy, about eco-determination, and so on. That's actually the essence of Pancasilanomics.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
And thank
Jerry
you
Marman.
to both of you, Mr. Rielmi and Mr. Marman.
Thank
for
you,
your
Pak Jerry Marman.
excellent animation. Yes, excellent. Very and so kind.
Thank you very much, all speaker and Mr. Jerry. And before I leave this stage, I would like to say thanks. And finally, I send back this platform to MC. Thank you.
Good luck.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Zakaria and Mr. Jerry. And also thank you very much to our speaker, Professor Jayati Ghosh, Professor Oliver Babu, and Dr. Dian for the super insightful knowledge. And now I would like to call Dr. Jubaida MM to pass on the certificate to our honorable outstanding speaker, Professor Oliver and Dr. Dian. So Dr. Jubaida, the time is yours.
Thank you, Liza. Please accept the certificate for Professor Oliver. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Has decided knowledge and insight for us.
Thank you.
The webinar seminar participant. Thank you very much. Please accept the digital certificate.
Okay.
Keeping healthy and always happy, Prof.
Okay, you too, and thank you. I'm very proud of this certificate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And next, please to Dr. Jubaida to pass on the certificate to our honorable outstanding speaker, Dr. Dian. To Dr. Jubaida, the time is yours.
Prof. Dian, Ibu Dian, Dr. Dian Wicaksono. Please accept the digital certificate as speaker, as great speaker. Thank you very much, Bu Dian, as divided knowledge and insight for us. The webinar participant today. Thank you very much, Bu Dian.
Thank you, Bu Dr. Jubaida. I received the certificate. Thank you for the opportunity. It is my pleasure to share with all of the participants.
Thank you, Dian.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jubaida. Next, I would like to call Mr. Fahru Novrian, PhD, as Head of Economic Science Program, UPN Veteran Jakarta, to give the certificate to our Honorable Moderator and Co-Moderator, Mr. Zakaria and Mr. Zeri. To Mr. Fahru, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Liza. We would like to give this certificate to Mr. Jack as the moderator of this event to thank for his participation. And also, I would like to say thank you to Professor Olivier Favreau. Merci, Professor. Maybe we can invite you again in our next discussion. Thank you for your time and
Merci
your
beaucoup.
Presentation. Merci
Yes,
beaucoup.
it was a pleasure.
I would like to speak in French with you, but I'm afraid everyone will be angry with me.
Of course. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Merci, professeur. Je vous remercie.
Voilà, merci. À bientôt.
Oui. À bientôt. Merci. Au revoir, monsieur.
Au revoir, merci.
Oui. Oh, yes, okay. I'm sorry, I forget. I would like also to give this certificate to Dr. Jerry Marman to thank for his participation as co-moderator. Thank you, Pak Jerry. Okay.
Merci beaucoup.
Oh, merci beaucoup. Okay, merci beaucoup. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Fahru, Mr. Jerry, and also Mr. Zach. And now I will leave you with a quote by Stewart Brand, an author and innovative thinker, who once said, "We can see the past but not influence it. We can influence the future but not see it." May all of us be guided by all the things we have learned today and be able to see and influence our future. Amin. I am Liza Fabrina, as today Master of Ceremony. Apologize for any mistake. Thank you everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Have a nice day. Wabillahi taufiq walhidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam bela negara.
Jerry, terima kasih Pak Jerry.
Makasih.
Pak Jerry, terima kasih.
Makasih semuanya.
Makasih semuanya. Makasih
Sukses,
Pak Jerry.
Salam kenal, Bapak.
Ya, salam kenal.
Terima kasih Pak Jerry.
Sukses.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu.
Thank you, Pak.
Terima
kasih semuanya.
Sukses ya.
Pak Jack. Sukses semuanya.
Sukses.